Hey, what's up? Zach here, and this year's Ultimate Tennis Shoe Buyer's Guide is going to have a few tweaks to it versus previous that people have been requesting in the comments section. Now this year still, you'll be able to find the best shoes for each category. Let's say you are somebody with heel pain who's a baseline grinder and also maybe has a wide foot. You'll still be able to see each shoe in each, and then whichever shoe shows up in every category, that's usually my favorite shoe for that. But also in this year's guide, I'm also putting my very favorite shoe for each subcategory, so you can see the one that kind of I think is the best kind of for each individual category. So that same shoe might show up in a lot of different categories, or one might show up in one and not the other. So that's kind of be the one tweak to this video this year. And heads up, if you are someone that is chronically injured and is trying to get back to the court and just haven't been able to get a good straight answer to specific issues you have in our kind of very specific world of court sports, make sure you click my links in the description below for one-on-one consulting. If you just need someone that kind of understands your specific problems, I am offering that down below. All right, and that brings us to the first category, foot shape. Now, if you're somebody with a wider foot, obviously you're going to want a shoe with a little more bulbous forefoot and midfoot. Now, there are a lot of shoes still in the tennis space that come in wide widths, especially now I'm even seeing Nikes come out in wide widths in the women's space, as well as obviously New Balance and Asics. But obviously, if you're somebody with a narrow foot, you don't want a super wide shoe that your foot's going to be banging around it and causing a lot of instability. For those types of people, I like something like Adidas Cybersonic or even the re-release of the Vapor 9.5s. And if you are someone whose foot runs pretty standard width and size, something like the Diadora Blue Shield 2 or even once again the Vapor 9.5 is going to be a pretty good pickup, not too wide, not too narrow. Now, if you're somebody with a higher arch foot, you're going to want something with a little bit more of a forgiving stack of foam in the forefoot, something that gives a little bit more dense support to your foot so you're not just pushing right through the shoe every time the ball of your foot comes down. And for this category and for the last few years, the best shoe on the market has been the Diadora Blue Shield Torneo, right now the Torneo 2. And on the same side of that coin, somebody with flatter arches is also going to want something with pretty stout foam so they're not over-pronating all the way through the shoe. Remember, like I say a lot, the same shoes that are good for high arches are a lot of times good for people with flat feet as well. All right, and that brings me to the second category, game style. Now, if you're somebody that's a serve and volleyer, you're going to need a shoe that's pretty easy to get from baseline all the way to the net, something a little bit more streamlined. Right now, I think the best shoes in this category is number one, the Adidas Cybersonic, as well as, once again, Diadora B-Icon 2. But if you're someone that's sliding all around the court, you need something, number one, for durable hard court sliding, and number two, a shoe that's just easy to slide on a hard court. Number one, and the shoes that are kind of just made for that specifically have been the Nike Vapor Pro 2 and the Nike Vapor 11, as well as the Asics Gel Resolution 9. Now, if you're a big serve plus one player, you're going to need a shoe with a very stout support to it to give yourself a lot of balance after you come down off that serve to set up for that next really big shot. For this, I like, once again, the Diadora Blue Shield Torneo 2. The New Balance Coco CG1 is also a great option, as well as the Mizuno Wave Enforce Tour. But if you're the opposite of a big serve plus one player, if you're a baseline grinder or retriever, you need a shoe that gets from east to west very fast. Also a shoe that can keep you lively enough from the baseline. So like, once again, the Asics Gel Resolution 9, the Asics Court FF2, the Diadora Blue Shield Torneo 2, the Lotto Mirage 100, any of those shoes that get from east to west and from very large distances very easily, but also can keep your feet pretty fresh while doing it. And if it doesn't really matter what your game style is, the only thing you really care about is speed, you're going to want a shoe that gets off the blocks really quick, as well as something with pretty tight suspension like the Lotto Mirage 100 and Adidas Cybersonic. If you're someone that plays a very creative all-court game, you're going to want a shoe that basically just gets out of your own way and allows you to bring your own talents to the tennis court. Something like the Adidas Cybersonic or Diadora B-Icon 2 are great options for this. Now, if you're a player that needs one shoe for multiple surfaces, say you're playing on hard as well as clay, as maybe as a little bit of carpet, and you're going to want something with pretty hard herringbone or more flat herringbone. Something like the Nike Vapor Pro 2 Clay is really good. Just remember, don't try to slide on these shoes on a hard court. You'll probably hyperextend a knee. Now, if you're someone that's playing a lot of doubles, you want a shoe for a lot of containment that can hold its ground really well, especially up at net, especially if you're playing high-level doubles. Something like the K-Swiss Ultra Shot 3 or, once again, Mizuno Wave Enforce Tour. And at the same token, if you're a pickleball player, you want a shoe with really good grip and something that can really do well, especially off your back foot if you're digging for balls behind you. One of the best shoes for this is actually the Way of Wade Fission 8, which is a basketball shoe, or one of the same shoes that's in the category of doubles. And that brings us to the third category, injuries, body type, and chronic conditions. And for players with the most common chronic condition I see, which is heel pain, you're going to want a shoe that's very forgiving in the heel, but also that doesn't allow a lot of micro motion. Something like, once again, Mizuno Wave Enforce Tour, Diadora Blue Shield Torneo 2, or Asics Gel Resolution 9. And if you're someone who's a chronic ankle sprainer, obviously you're going to want something with a pretty stout lateral flange and something with a pretty dense midsole setup. Something like the Onyx Eclipsian 4 or Asics Gel Resolution 9. Now, if you're somebody with really painful flat foot, arch strain, or tendinitis on the inside or outside of your foot, foot, you're going to want a shoe that has a pretty stout midsole as well as shank to keep that foot held up. Something like the New Balance Coco CG1, or I know I sound like a broken record, but the Diadora Blue Shield 2002. And if you're somebody with posterior heel pain or Achilles pain, remember most tennis shoes have a little bit of eversion to them, so probably going to want an orthotic in that shoe, but also a shoe that is very forgiving in the heel, something like the New Balance Fresh Foam Lab V2. And on the opposite end of the foot, if you're somebody with ball of foot pain, number one, you don't want a shoe that's too constricting, but number two, you want something that's going to offload that forefoot either from the shank and the midfoot, or that has a decent forgiving stack of foam in the forefoot. Something like the Lotto Raptor Hyperpulse 100, Wave and Force Tour, or 2002. And if you're someone that suffers from shin splints, you're going to want some of the same shoes that are in the tendinitis, arch strain category. Just make sure it's a shoe that's not super, super heavy so that your anterior tibial tendon isn't having to lug a shoe super heavy up off the ground. If you're someone that has pain even higher up the chain though, like patellar tendinitis, knee pain, hip, back pain, you're going to want something with a pretty dense and forgiving stack of foam in the shoe for a lot of shock absorption. Once again, one of the best ones out there is the Mizuno Wave and Force Tour. And if you're a tennis or pickleball player on the heavier end of the spectrum, you're also going to want a shoe that's going to be able to hold your body up, not something you're just going to pummel right through to the ground. Something like, once again, Asics Gel Resolution 9, I think, is one of the better ones for this, as well as Diadora Blue Shield 2002, something forgiving, but will also give you some pretty stout support. On the opposite side of the spectrum though, if you're a very lightweight player, you're not going to want to have to lug around a super heavy shoe. It's like the New Balance 996 V5 or the Cybersonics are a really good pickup for lighter weight players. And if you're someone that wears an orthotic or a brace, you're going to want something with a really nice lockdown. Something like the Mizuno Wave and Force Tour is a really good pickup for this, as well as, once again, Diadora Blue Shield 2002. Just make sure you use the runner's knot. And if you're one of the hardest people to fit shoes for, somebody with a very narrow heel, you're going to want something with a lot of padding and bulk in the heel counter. Something like the Mizuno Wave and Force Tour with the dual heel counter and ankle collar, or the Adidas Cybersonic. And I will have links below to where you can purchase all these shoes. And if you have any ideas for other categories you'd like to see in future Ultimate Tennis Buyer's Guide, yeah, that's the title of the video, Buyer's Guide videos, please leave them in the comments down below, and hopefully I can get them into a future video. All right, respect your rubber and foam. See you in the next one.